The other day we were talking about radiation and whatnot with the phones, and we're talking about how the Chicago Tribune went and did this testing in order to check the radiation level being emitted, radio frequency being emitted from popular devices, and then contrasting that against the FCC numbers necessary for a brand to get the approval to sell their device in a particular market. 2 days after this test went public, a giant lawsuit took shape. Apple and Samsung have now been hit by a lawsuit over these unsafe RF levels from iPhone and Galaxy models. So this may be more impactful than originally assumed when the numbers first came out. Now, I gotta be honest here. When I first read it, I feel like I was too easy on these companies. I felt like I was like, look, they passed the FCC. Who knows? Did the Tribune, did they do it right? Like, this isn't their core business, testing for RF. Like, maybe they did something wrong. And of course, Apple refuted the findings, and the numbers were nutty. Like, as far as the orders of magnitude more exposure than what the official numbers suggested, that I was like, I don't know, it seemed like something was off. Of course, Apple came out immediately after it happened and said, look, you're testing wrong. We meet the criteria. We don't want to ever hear from you again. But now, I've done a little more reading here. I feel like I'm a bit more on the case. Look, it's intense. There's a lot to this thing. And we're not going to have all the various data points, but I pledge to like keep an eye on it as best I can, which like I'm living life too, so I'm going to come on here and tell you if something develops or changes or if I look at something differently. I'm going to be honest. I'm going to come on here and do my best. And so what I discovered here on this next article after seeing the lawsuit was that maybe there's something to it. Maybe I went too easy, and maybe the Tribune was right to pull off. Let me just break something down right here. The tests that the FCC allows for its guidelines for manufacturers is 10 to 15 millimeters away from the human body. What? What good is that test? 10 to 15 millimeters away. This is in your pocket or up to your face. That's all not 10 to 15 millimeters. Yep. Or in your hands. How do you use it? What good is 10 to 15 millimeter exposure test to a device you're meant to hold?
You got to wear some really thick gloves.
Oh, or like, is it like, do you interact with it with your eyeballs, like moving them up and down, and it's like 15 millimeters? Like, and I really apologize for not like emphasizing that aspect of the testing, because what you come to find is that every single one of these devices is like just under the allowed amount at the 10 millimeter range. Like, they engineer it from a hardware and software perspective to just barely meet the criteria that the testing allows for. So it will dip right under at the 10 millimeter amount. Some do better than that, but most of them, they just meet the level there. And then when you get up to like anything closer, then they fail. In some cases, catastrophically. In the case, for example, of the Galaxy S8, when it went to 2 millimeters from the body, it exceeded the FCC's limit by 500%. The Galaxy S8, look at that, 8.22. At 10 millimeters, it's 1.53. And I presume that the ratio, the measurement there is watts per kilogram. So as you can see, proximity is the key characteristic. And so now you start to say to yourself, well, wait a minute. Is the whole testing criteria off? Do we need new testing criteria? And what are the implications of that? Because I go on to read here that the lawsuit also takes a stab at Apple's marketing, stating that the advertising shows people holding phones in their bare hands. What? Yeah, of course. They're holding phones in their bare hands. How else do you hold them? But they're saying like the radiation levels are above the guideline if you hold it.
Right.
But not if you don't. And I'm like, wait, what? What? Now, granted, there's probably somebody in the FCC watching this saying, well, if we had to adjust our measurements to account for the fact that you're holding it, we would have some other threshold. I'm guessing that's how they play it. But I'm sitting here, I'm a regular guy. I'm a regular person. Yeah, I used a spudger before. But otherwise, I'm living life in the world, trying to get by. And you kind of count on these entities to do some of this work for you when you pick these things up. Now, again, it's a lawsuit. The lawyers, it's a feeding frenzy. They see name. You know what happens, Will? They see a name like Apple or something in a headline like that. You know what happens?
No.
You ever seen when they're trying to attract? When they take you out on a boat and you're going out there to go in the cage. You go down below the water surface. You go in the cage with the scuba gear. And they drop you from the boat. Maybe you're in, I don't know where you are. You're in the Caribbean. You're off the coast. Yeah. Maybe you're on the West Coast, guy like you. They need to attract some wildlife so you have a good time. Yeah. Don't they?
Oh, yeah.
So you know what they do? They drop a little fresh meat in the water.
A little bait.
Yeah. Something like that. And guess what happens? Who shows up?
I'm like, oh, nice turtle. Oh, nice fish.
Yeah, who shows up?
Shark.
Yeah, that's who shows up. Couple of sharks. Let me tell you something. A headline with Apple in it and the word radiation in it.
It's juicy.
I mean, that's all a shark's going to need, isn't it? That's a nutritious meal for the right kind of shark, Willie do. You'd have to agree with something like that, wouldn't you?
Oh, yeah.
So anyhow, they jump all over it, Apple, Samsung, and these are some of the things they say in a lawsuit over here. I don't say it. Look at this. Numerous recent scientific publications supported by hundreds of scientists worldwide have shown that RF radiation exposure affects living organisms at levels well below most international and national guidelines. Effects include increased cancer risk, cellular stress, increase in harmful free radicals, genetic damages, structural and functional changes of the reproductive system, learning and memory deficits, neurological disorders, and negative impacts on general well-being in humans. I read that like when you watch the pharmaceutical commercials. You got to say it fast. And everyone's like, where's the football game?
Yeah.
You see?
Let's get this over with.
Yeah. But anyway, that's in there. And that's some scary stuff. The complaint also notes that Apple, prior to the iPhone 7, used to have warnings about the distance the devices were tested for, ranging between 5 and 10 millimeters. But then later, the company dropped the messaging. Ooh, that's creepy stuff, isn't it? Where'd that messaging go?
Salacious.
I don't know. So, look, I know it's a cash grab. I get it. But why are we testing these things at 15 millimeters away? I don't understand that.
Yeah.
2 millimeters might be as close as you can do, but guess what? You got no millimeters. You got when you're
holding it, yeah.
When you're sitting there clocked in having your session, diving deep on the YouTube home feed, Willie do. Hours and hours, you're touching the thing. Yeah. So maybe we got to revamp this thing. I don't know who's in control, who's got the power here. And I told you I'm a regular guy. Maybe we can have someone sit in a chair for once. Maybe I'll get one of these scientists in here. Let me know. You're a scientist. Sit down. Let's have a chat. But nonetheless, the Tribune, they opened up a can of worms. Or better yet, a can of bait. The blood is in the water. You understand? The sharks are here.
And everyone's watching.
Willie do, ladies and gentlemen.